Any marketing course that requires the development of marketing plans such as marketing management, marketing strategy, and segmentation support marketing, this is the only planning handbook that guides students through the step-by-step creation of customized marketing plan, while offering commercial software to aid in the process. The asteroid that slammed into the moon 3.8 billion years ago, creating the Imbrium Basin, may have had a diameter of at least 150 miles, according to a new estimate. The work helps explain puzzling geological features on the moon's near side and has implications for understanding the evolution of the early solar system. Electronic discourse is one form of interactive electronic communication. In this study, we reserve the term for the two-directional texts in which one person using a keyboard writes language that appears on the sender's monitor and is transmitted to the monitor of a recipient who responds by keyboard. As we progress into the 21st century, communications are becoming faster and faster and faster. Think of the millions of different media images you are bombarded with every day. It is as important now to be able to read and make sense of those images as it has been to be able to read the ordinary text. Although it hails from a remote region of the western Himalayas, this plant now looks entirely at home on the banks of English rivers. Brought to the UK in 1839, it quickly escaped colonized riverbanks and damp woodlands. Now it is spreading across Europe, New Zealand, and Canada. In the Himalayas, the plant is held in check by various pests, but take these away and it grows and reproduces unhindered. How quickly is the world's population growing? In the United States and other developed countries, the current growth rate is very low. In most developing countries, the human population is growing at 3 people per second. Because of this bustling growth rate, the human population is growing to reach 9 billion within your lifetime. The quest for a user-friendly copyright regime began a decade ago when the Hong Kong government launched a public consultation on copyright protection in digital environment in December 2006. Although this consultation initially sought to address internet-related challenges, such as those caused by peer-to-peer file sharing technology, the reform effort quickly evolved into a more comprehensive digital upgrade of the Hong Kong copyright regime. It isn't rare for private equity houses to hire grads fresh out of business school, he said, but 9 times out of 10, the students who nab these jobs are the ones who had private equity experience under their belt before even starting their MBA program. Surprisingly, despite what appear to be infinite variations, all difficult conversations share a common structure. When you're caught up in the details and anxiety of a particularly difficult conversation, this structure is hard to see. But understanding that structure is essential to improving how you handle your most challenging conversations. The founding fathers established constitutional protections for the press because they understood that leaving the watchdog function to partisan politicians wouldn't necessarily serve the public interest. Both sides have too many incentives to preserve the status quo and ignore problems that elude quick fixes.
Where there are effects, there are often side effects. The car is a boon to mobility, but can lead to obesity, injuries, deaths, and pollution. Burning fossil fuel may keep economies going, but wrecks the climate in the long run. In a similar way, there are side effects to information technology in education settings, from childcare to the classroom to the lecture hall and beyond. Weakness in electronics, auto, and gas station sales dragged down overall retail sales last month. But excluding those three categories, retailers enjoyed healthy increases across the board, according to government figures released Wednesday. Moreover, December sales numbers were also revised higher.
I had also noticed that the more Sanskrit I studied and translated, the better my verbal memory seemed to become. Fellow students and teachers often remarked on my ability to exactly repeat lecturers' own sentences when asking them questions in class. Other translators of Sanskrit told me of similar cognitive shifts. So I was curious, was there actually a language-specific Sanskrit effect as claimed by the tradition? Either way, can you handle the truthiness? Research says probably not. We're terrible at detecting lies. Even technology doesn't improve our chances. A 2009 study in the Journal of Forensic Sciences examined a technique called voice stress analysis and found that it worked about as well as, you guessed it, guessing. Scientists from Canada, Japan, and Germany decided to take a closer look at some of those weapons. They examined the ballistic guns of predatory marine microbes called dinoflagellates, the ones you have just seen, due in part to their tantalizing resemblance to those found in stinging animals like coral and jellyfish. The United States is at present the world market for motor cars and trucks. An agent for the U.S. Bureau of Foreign and Domestic Commerce reports a prosperous condition of affairs prevailing in Japan, which is buying more automobiles, especially large cars, than ever before. The control condition was identical, except that subjects were not giving the paragraph with the false information and rated not only once. The control condition was identical, except that subjects were not giving the paragraph with the false information and rated not only once. At a more general level, this research underscores the threat that fake news poses to democratic society. The aim of using fake news as propaganda is to make people think and behave in ways they wouldn't otherwise. For example, hold a view that is contradicted by overwhelming scientific consensus. Cancer patients have primarily been limited to one option for care, chemotherapy, which attacks almost any cell that replicates quickly. Recently, however, predictive biomarkers have opened the door to matching patients with targeted treatments based on their unique disease biology. As objective, quantifiable measures of biological processes, biomarkers can reveal details of a patient's disease and its progression, as well as how they might respond to treatment. By comparing DNA sequences from a patient's healthy tissues and tumor cells, and using a number of complex algorithms, scientists can determine the number of acquired somatic mutations present in tumors but not in normal tissues. It's important because that's a marker in the cancer itself. Some varieties of wood, such as oak and maple, are renowned for their strength, but scientists say a simple and inexpensive new process can transform any type of wood into a material stronger than steel and even some high-tech titanium alloys. Besides taking a star turn in buildings and vehicles, the substance could even be used to make bullet-resistant armor plates. Some varieties of wood, such as oak and maple, are renowned for their strength, but scientists say a simple and inexpensive new process can transform any type of wood into a material stronger than steel and even some high-tech titanium alloys. Besides taking a star turn in buildings and vehicles, the substance could even be used to make bullet-resistant armor plates. Wood is abundant and relatively low cost. It literally grows on trees, and although it has been used for millennia to build everything from furniture to homes and larger structures, untreated wood is rarely as strong as metals used in construction. The results are impressive. The team's compressed wood is 3 times as dense as the untreated substance, who says, adding that its resistance to being ripped apart is increased more than tenfold. It also can become about 50 times more resistant to compression and almost 20 times as stiff. The densified wood is also substantially harder, more scratch resistant and more impact resistant. It can be molded into almost any shape. This flu season is a particularly severe one, and it's not over yet. Health officials say flu activity will likely remain elevated for at least several more weeks. But if you already caught the flu, are you in the clear for the rest of the season? Non-invasive brain stimulation is having its heyday as scientists and hobbyists alike look for ways to change the activity of neurons without cutting into the brain and implanting electrodes. Non-invasive brain stimulation is having its heyday as scientists and hobbyists alike look for ways to change the activity of neurons without cutting into the brain and implanting electrodes. When we put toast in the toaster or add marshmallows to the top of our sweet potatoes for a baked holiday dish, we expect them to turn brown and to develop a sweet caramelized flavor. Although we expect it to happen, do you know why certain foods take on these new colors and flavors as they are toasted? Non-invasive brain stimulation is having its heyday as scientists and hobbyists alike look for ways to change the activity of neurons without cutting into the brain and implanting electrodes. Next, the researchers wanted to figure out how much current they needed to apply to the human scalp to produce those electrical fields inside the brain.
Markets translate the decisions of millions of people into a price for a stock or bond. Like a spooked crowd in a public place, investors tend at times to run in the same direction. Let's all play the lottery or let's escape the burning movie theater. If one tilts one's head backward far enough, the body's reflexes will kick in. Neurons that are responsible for firing when the brain senses the body is off balance will set off a cascade of signals from the inner ear to the brain stem, then to the spinal cord, and finally to the muscles that tell the body to lurch forward for the save. In sports like figure skating, the body is frequently in such unlikely positions. So how do skaters convince their brains that it's totally okay the body is halfway to a faceplant? If one tilts one's head backward far enough, the body's reflexes will kick in. Neurons that are responsible for firing when the brain senses the body is off balance will set off a cascade of signals from the inner ear to the brain stem, then to the spinal cord, and finally to the muscles that tell the body to lurch forward for the save. In sports like figure skating, the body is frequently in such unlikely positions. So how do skaters convince their brains that it's totally okay the body is halfway to a faceplant? In this activity, you will explore the reaction that creates these tasty toasted treats and experiment with speeding up and slowing down the process. My own role in the controversy has been to keep up a spate of arguments against the disease model of addiction in books, the press, and online, mostly on scientific grounds. As a neuroscientist, I'm able to show why brain change, either in general or specifically in the striatum, the motivational core, does not equal pathology or disease. The disease model remains dominant in the US because of its stakeholders. First, the rehab industry, worth an estimated $35 billion per year, uses the disease nomenclature in a vast majority of its ads and slogans. Despite consistently low success rates, that's not likely to stop because it pulls in the cash. Second, as long as addiction is labeled a disease, medical insurance providers can be required to pay for it. If we stop confusing addiction with pathology, then we can focus much more clearly on the specific needs of specific individuals. That seems a huge advantage over dumping everyone in a basket that fits almost no one. Not that I have anything against neuroscience, which was the main focus of my research career for years, but researchers who aren't into neuroscience have been ignored, and that's not a good thing. Many experts had been forecasting a decline for months after a prolonged upswing resulted in a series of record highs. Several factors are likely to have been involved. The Bureau of Labor Statistics' January jobs report, released on Friday, was almost certainly one of them.
Nuclear power, like the boy next door, seems to have grown up overnight. That it has indeed come of age is incontrovertible. For 2 years running, it has accounted for nearly half of all the new power generating capacity ordered by US utilities.
Roughly 1 million sexually transmitted infections are exchanged each day. If untreated, they can lead to cervical cancer, pelvic inflammatory disease, and infertility. However, people are often reluctant to ask their doctors to test for such infections, so Eve Medical in Toronto developed a kit for women to screen themselves.
We acknowledge all the information and memory notes are provided by students. We also acknowledge open source from various books and journal articles. All questions and answers are prepared and annotated by PTE Magazine. All rights reserved. Not for any commercial purposes, for personal study only. Current policy responses do not address the fundamental question of why so many mass shootings take place in schools. To answer this question, we need to get to the heart of how students experience school and the meaning that schools have in American life. Like isolated from Western Europe, Russia grew up without participating in the development like the Reformation that many Russians, taking pride in their unique culture, find dubious value. Russia is, as a result, the most unusual member of European family, if indeed it is European at all. The question is still open to debate, particularly among Russians themselves. Like isolated from Western Europe, Russia grew up without participating in the development like the Reformation that many Russians, taking pride in their unique culture, find dubious value. Russia is, as a result, the most unusual member of European family, if indeed it is European at all. The question is still open to debate, particularly among Russians themselves. The Royal Institution is an organization that has been around for 209 years. Many of the people that have worked here have been scientists themselves, including Michael Faraday. He made the discoveries that made generating and using electricity much easier, making it possible for us all to switch on lights, cook for dinner, play games, consoles, much more.